Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of The Dark Hustle. Thank you so much for listening to my podcast and subscribing and following us. It's super cool. You guys are the best. Also, if you are not a member of our Patreon, what are you doing? Go check it out. It's got multiple levels to choose from, and we have early access over there for all of our episodes and a bunch of other stuff. So go check us out on Patreon.
Hey, is this Billy?
It is. Yep.
Hey, it's Brian. Early on a Monday for you.
No, no.
Everybody always has those sayings about Monday.
No, actually, Mondays are my favorite days.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and just get started on this. Now, just a little backstory about you. You currently are commissioner for the NRHA, correct?
That's correct.
And when did your career in the horse industry start? Did you start at a very young age kind of riding horses, or when did you enter this industry?
Well, my extended family has been involved in horses for forever. So, I had an aunt and an uncle who were horse trainers, racehorse trainers. In fact, my aunt was one of the really very first women as a horse race trainer, or a racehorse trainer.
Wow.
So my connection goes back a long way. I never competed on horses. My son was he rode reiners, and so I have kind of a long connection with reining horses. But we've been involved directly and indirectly as a family, an extended family, essentially my whole life in one way or another. So my grandparents both raised a few racehorses, and I had one grandfather who traded horses way back. I mean, like in the 30s and 40s. So horses have always been kind of a backdrop in my family.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't realize how many people had their hands in horse racing. When you get to talking to people, a lot of people have been around and they're in and out of it at some point in time in their life. So what led you to work in a part, because you're kind of in the office, more business type setting when it comes to the horse industry versus, a lot of people are out there in the dirt and doing all that kind of good stuff.
Yeah.
How did you end up there? Did you just decide
I was a university professor.
Oh, wow.
For about 10 years at West Texas A&M, and Jim Jennings, who was the longtime editor of the Quarter Horse Journal, asked me to judge some horse publications, which I did. I was happy to do. I'd been involved in publishing and media journalism for a long time, and that was I was glad to do that, and so it was from that this is kind of a long story, but there was an opening in a marketing position at the American Quarter Horse Association, and I went to my department head and went through the process at the university of qualifying for sabbatical. So the idea was that I would, because I always had this notion that if you're not careful as a university professor, you can kind of lose your edge because you're not keeping up. So sabbaticals are supposed to be a way for people to keep up with the industry. So I got approval for a sabbatical, and which was supposed to be 1 year. So I'd work at AQHA for 1 year, and then come back to the university. So, that was 35 years ago. And so I suppose I should call the university and tell them I'm not coming back, but I figure they probably got that figured out by now. So
Right.
that
Well,
it's kind of circuitous, but yeah, that's the way it happened.
well, that's kind of cool. That's the way that happened because, I would assume, well, I don't want to say dealing with kids is probably more hard to deal with, but having all of that in the horse industry is probably a little more attractive to, it's good that you got that opportunity. It's more attractive to stay where you're at. So you went into, AQHA and you stayed there how long?
I was there 10 years. I've got this strange 10-year evolution. So I was a journalist for a while, and then I spent 10 years as a professor, roughly 10, and then 10 years at AQHA, and then another 10 at APHA.
Okay, that's right. Yeah, APHA. Now, since you've been in the horse industry so long and you've seen all the highs and lows and the kind of trends that kind of happen with that, could you agree that, Yellowstone and COVID and maybe within the last 4 or 5 years is probably the highest that you've seen the horse industry?
It's hard to, the 90s were pretty darn good. But they didn't have that sort of meteoric rise. Historically, the horse industry, in my view, has always been tied in some ways to things like the oil and gas industry, because a lot of people in those industries were involved with horses. And so if you really look at the horse industry and you look at oil and gas prices, they tend to parallel one another. So when oil and gas prices tank, then it usually has an effect on the horse industry, because what we do, frankly, is it's an expensive sport, and it's discretionary income in many ways. So you're kind of occasionally at the mercy of the economy. But Yellowstone and that phenomenon it created a steeper spike, and so
Right.
The whole, if you really want to go back, and the there have been other similar events historically that involve cowboys and the lure of the West that has driven the horse market. But it certainly is something we're been fortunate to have.
It's kind of comforting that you answered it like that. Like you said, it kind of runs along with the other industry, because I've never looked at it like that. That's very true, because a lot of those same people, that market, all kind of ties in with the same kind of people that are in the equine industry. Now you live out in the Midwest, right?
No, I actually live halfway between Fort Worth and Decatur.
Oh, okay. Okay, but you are there kind of in the heart of it.
I am in the heart of it. So I spend 3 or 4 days a week in Oklahoma City, and 3 or 4 days a week in Fort Worth, depending upon what's going on. It actually works out really well, because so much of the Reining community lives in that I-35 corridor between Fort Worth and Oklahoma City. So it's actually worked out really well.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I've heard a lot of people kind of say, well, we moved out to Oklahoma, or we moved out to Texas before Reining. Or I've seen where some people kind of moved from Arizona and California to Texas and Oklahoma for Reining. So I don't think people realize how kind of dense it is out there for Reining.
It's really dense, but you still have a really vibrant group of reiners in Arizona. Definitely a very, very large group in Arizona, kind of in Ohio, and as well as this, I call it the I-35 corridor. But yeah, those are those are some hotbeds of reining activity, horse activity in general, but reining more specifically.
Now, what do you think the industry could do to kind of cater to people that are, because there's a lot of people that are, Upper East that do reining and do things of that, roping and all that kind of good stuff. You've got Florida is becoming a really, really big area. You've got a lot of horses in Florida, and then in California. What do you think the industry can do or is doing to kind of cater to those people, to not have to ask somebody to, travel a week to come to a big show out in
Yeah,
Oklahoma,
it's actually right. And we're trying to focus some attention on that. For example, we're working very closely with the Quarter Horse Congress to build up the reining part of that event. So you've got a really nice premium event in Ohio, in that region that really it kind of draws from the Midwest and from the Northeast. So So we're trying to do some creative things to do that, and I think it's a double-edged sword, this concentration of reiners. There's some very positive things associated with it, but there's some things we want to guard against, and we want to make sure that Arizona enclave stays strong, and they've got some nice events there as well in Arizona. In Arizona, California, Nevada, that kind of area, that's an area we want to keep vibrant. And then we're exploring, trying to do more around Florida to try to continue to grow that area as well. We've seen a lot of people migrate, for example, to reining from the hunter jumper community. Well, that's Florida is really a big hunter jumper enclave, but we think we can attract some hunter jumpers to our industry. We're already seeing it. So we're already seeing people coming to the reining community from other communities as well.
Yeah, I can agree with that, because you are correct. I've seen that too, kind of as well. And a lot of people were kind of upset, or they were worried. They were upset there for a while, a couple years ago, about Congress. Congress is going down, da 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 da. It was a bunch of hoopla. But I always kind of thought to myself, well, that's one of the only other places outside of Texas and Oklahoma for people to go to that's a major show. So it'd be hard to get rid of that. I mean, it's not going to go anywhere.
Well, we've kind of taken the position that we want to try to not create new things, but create new opportunities at existing venues. I think it makes a lot more sense for us. Yeah. So, and of course, the Congress people are great to work with, and they're, we have a mutual respect and mutual needs, and so they've been great to work with. So that's more of our strategy, is to try to help support in different ways, these strong events across the country.
Well, now that leads me to, so now you went from AQHA to, paint horse, and we kind of talked about this a little bit before, how strong and just consistently strong paint has just continued to just keep going up and up and up and up. Like, it's becoming an attraction for a lot of the disciplines. And I remember you saying, that was on purpose. Like, it was on purpose for paint to do what they did to get them to where they're at now. Can you talk a little bit about, what part did you have on that?
Well, when we got to APHA, there was, the economy was not very good. There was a lot of struggle, a lot of decline, and the board of directors was, they were concerned that something needed to happen significantly, and so we set out. It was a long-term project, but the idea was to create opportunities for paint horses, and probably one of the most important things that we did is create an environment where more horses can participate, and we did that through DNA. So really the paint horse today is a horse that's defined by its genetics and by the genes that are in paint horses that produce color, that produce that white color. And so the long history at APHA was about how much white did they have, was the white in the correct place. It was just an ongoing battle, and it didn't help the industry because
Right.
or help that whole community, because the rules kept changing rather routinely, and it just confused people. So we really had long conversations with our board of directors about how, we need to be able to open this up. And when you think about it, what is the definition of a paint horse? Well, a definition of a paint horse is whatever APHA says it is, just as the definition of a quarter horse is whatever AQHA says it is. So,
Yeah.
So we had a supportive board of directors, and we developed a strategy that let more horses in, but maybe bigger than that, we also had the backing that allowed us to be very creative and to do some things that other people, maybe would be reluctant to do. And we moved our offices into the heart of the stockyards development. So now, if their traffic is somewhere approaching 10 million people a year who walk right in front of the APHA office. So that's a rare opportunity for an organization, and we're just fortunate to have a board of directors who could catch that vision and a really good staff that could help execute that vision. And it's been hugely successful. And if you add to that the whole Chrome Cash program, which is a really simple idea, but it's generated a tremendous amount of interest, and it's put a lot of money into the pockets of paint horse owners in various disciplines. And so it's about being creative, not being afraid to try new things, but also having a talented staff and a board of directors willing to try new things.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the location at the stockyards is becoming an attraction for people that don't even own a horse. I mean, I've seen quite a couple of posts like on social media where people are like, we visit APHA, and so that's really cool. And then on top of that, to add cash as an incentive, which I have seen a lot more now than I did previously, that makes it even more lucrative for all of the clubs, all of the disciplines, to have something to give back to people. Like, here is a reason why you want to do this.
Well, and it's increasingly in the horse show world, because it's not an inexpensive sport. It's an expensive sport.
Right.
I think the evolution is moving away from things like points and has been rapidly moving towards earning. So, if you can earn back part of your entry fee, or you can, if you've really got a great horse, and maybe you can actually make some money. So it's important. Everybody's got to do it. The question is, how quickly can they get it done? I think APHA has actually introduced, we've been working on it for some time, but it recently introduced a program that pays for points. So that, I think that's going to be a huge success in the coming years. So it's about being creative, and sometimes it's hard to do in the horse community.
Yeah, it is. I mean, like I remember we just showed for a ribbon, and you almost asked yourself, okay, well, why am I doing this again? It costs this much to do it.
It's an expensive ribbon, isn't it?
Yeah, it is an expensive ribbon. But I also wanted to touch on the genetics specifically part of it, because, as years have gone by and the industry grows and changes and things of that nature, the specific requirements for not just paint, but even quarter horse or any other of the clubs, all of that can get very muddy. And it's like you kind of watch people try to cater to this group of customer or this group of customer, and then you end up having exactly what you said. It's too confusing. It's so confusing. What horse is what, and where can you go? And now you have horses that are registered and 3 or 4 different places. What do you think that, do you think that not only separated paint, obviously, but did it help eliminate a lot of the problems that could cause clubs to get into when they don't take the time to kind of go, okay, well, this is what it is. We're going to put our foot down. You've got to separate yourself from other breeds and other things.
Well, I think it's sort of an interesting dichotomy in some ways. On one end, you cannot be afraid to be creative and to try new things. On the other end, the pace at which you change is important. And so if you're changing your rules every year, every couple of years, especially on the breeding end, it's very confusing, number one. And number two, a breeder can't just change year to year. They have to be thinking multiple years down the road. Because, in most of the events we have across in the horse show world, they have to at least be 2 years, and in most cases 3 or 4. So you've got a long-term thought process from a breeder, and it's hard to commit to an organization or to a breed if the rules are one thing this year, but next year they could be something altogether different. And so
right.
That was the effort at APHA, was to create more opportunities for more horses, but then to create something everyone could agree with and that could grow it. And then probably more importantly, it's to create an objective standard as opposed to a subjective standard that we had before. And I think that's important. Objectivity is really important in the horse community, because there's so much of it based on feel and gut feeling, that it's critically important that we have certain things that are objectively measured, not subjectively measured. That's what creates confusion in my view.
Yeah, I can agree with that, and I think obviously that was a good move. Now, as far as NRHA, I think we talked about this a little bit before. These breed associations and shows are really starting to pull that in. You guys are starting to, you're going to see Reining at, you see Reining at different breed association events and things of that nature. Has that always kind of happened with NRHA, or has that been something that's kind of new to help grow?
Well, there's always been, or at least for many years, Reining at breed shows. What's happened is the breed show has changed pretty dramatically over the decades. Where you might have a horse at a breed show that might compete in 4 or 5 or 6 different disciplines. You really don't have that anymore. So the breed show today is a collection of shows. So you've got a reining event, a cutting event, cow horse event, a Western pleasure event at the same show. So those are all unique sets of horses to a large degree today. And that used to not be the case a long time ago. It was that same horse might be able to do multiple things. In fact, quarter horses, paints, and all the stock horses build their horses as being versatile. Well, specialization has eliminated that. You really can't compete. So that's changed the breed show a fair amount. So, for example, NRHA has worked with AQHA to position the AQHA reining event at the AQHA World Show immediately before the Derby, the NRHA Derby, so that that should help grow the reining event at the AQHA World Show for people who are coming to Oklahoma City anyway to show in the NRHA Derby. So we'll see how that works, but we think it'll be helpful. I just think you've got to create, you've got to look at creative things and be able to do different things depending upon the situation and the event that you're kind of working with. And so we're trying to do more of those kinds of things where it makes sense.
You are correct, though. You just touched on something about horses in general now in the industry. They're way more versatile than before, like the 90s or, even 10, 15 years ago. You kind of had a horse for a specific thing, and now it's like they're breeding them, showing them, training them to do more of a versatility. Like I even saw, the rope horse industry, people are starting to look into barrel horse breeding and breeding in for roping and roping horses for barrels and stuff. And that's amazing to me. It's crazy how they're thinking outside of the box. And do you think that'll kind of help the industry grow as a whole, not just Reining, but all across the board?
Yeah, I think what's a little different about that is that they're trying to, they're seeing they're looking at breeding practices and outcrosses and things like that. But in the past at a breed show, you might have the very same horse doing all of those things. That day is kind of gone. But,
right.
Even with reiners, a lot of our reiners, they evolve and you might see them in the roping pen, or you might see them in other disciplines, ranch horse competitions later on. So there's still an element of versatility, but it's not that different with humans either.
True.
You think about kids today. What are they doing today? Well, when I was a kid, you play baseball for 3 months, and then you play basketball for 3 months, and then you'd play football for 3 months. But kids don't do that anymore. They really specialize early. Well, the same things happen in the horse industry. Is if you're going to be competitive in a particular discipline, you have to focus your breeding in that area. So to try to raise the best horses. So it's a pretty dynamic environment, but definitely there's been a lot of change over the last 40 years for sure.
Now, do you guys ever do any collaboration with NRCHA? And because some of the ranch
Sure.
cow horse events,
Yeah.
they include some reining. So I didn't know if you guys had any. Do you ever kind of foresee that, or have you done that in the past?
We have done some, and we stay very closely tied to all of the performance horse industry, and we know each other, and there are certain number of breeders and exhibitors who cross over and do multiple disciplines.
Right.
But we do some things together where it makes sense. I wouldn't say we have, we do lots of collaboration, but where it makes sense, we do. And, everybody gets along, and we try to figure out ways to be creative, but it's not, it's probably things we could probably do more things together, but we're certainly aware of each other and aware of trying to support each other for sure.
Now, if somebody was to get into reining, you said you have never shown a reiner, which is crazy to me. Most everybody that you speak to in your position or that has or works with someone like you, they've at least shown or ridden at some point in time. It has never dawned on you. You've never had any desire to show at all?
Oh, I've ridden a reiner. I've ridden reiners. My son had reiners, and I've ridden reiners before.
Oh, okay.
Ridden other people's reiners. I just have never shown in competition. So the way I describe it to some people is what we do at NRHA in the office is try to develop opportunities.
Yeah.
And so does that the way I like to talk about it is, I want to put that trainer or that exhibitor in a position where they can really excel at what they do, and they don't have to worry about a lot of things, and that they don't have to worry about is there sufficient purse money available. They don't have to worry about the process for getting a license, that it's fairly simple and straightforward. And our objective is to make things simple and uncomplicated for them, and to position reining as a really, dynamic sport that people want to participate in. So the way I describe myself is I love horses, and I love horses in everything they do. Yeah. And, I think that's important as well, so that you don't create a silo for yourself. There's a lot of important things to running an association that has really nothing to do with actually riding horses. From where I said, it's about creating the best environment for people who want to compete.
Yeah, well, I mean, the most I ever learned about horses was from somebody that didn't ride them. So, and you have to have it still, even though like we just said, it's a sport, and
Mm-hmm.
it's also a business. I mean, you have to have a business foundation to do this. So you need business people, not necessarily. I mean, you need business people to run it. So,
well, it's a different skill set,
Right.
And I've known people who've been successful in the horse association world with a wide range of different skills.
Yeah.
So, but I've been blessed to have owned some really nice horses in the past, and hope that continues as well. I expect it will continue. So, but I just never, my growth came up through watching my relatives and participating in some of the racing related efforts, and hope I can bring something to bear for the reining community that will help them a lot. I expect I will.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, I mean, I just had a conversation with a collegiate coach last night, and we were kind of talking about how it can actually muddy your thought process as far as, the difference between horse trainers and people that are in the horse industry that don't necessarily ride them. Sometimes those two perspectives make a greater outcome when put together than necessarily having someone who does ride and can't necessarily look at it from a business perspective. It just is what it is. So I wanted to also ask you about someone that, let's say, someone who's I've never ridden a reiner at all, ever. So, somebody who's never ridden a reiner, they want to get into the reining horse industry. What's the best path for them to do that, and how does NRHA kind of cater to that group of brand new faces that want to kind of get into a sport that's, reining is expensive. You can look at it and get very intimidated.
Mm-hmm. Well, for example, you can go on our website. We have a place where you can locate a trainer nearby. So, that could be as simple as just making a phone call. Most trainers I know will be happy to let somebody come over and test ride a horse or something like that. If you haven't ridden at all, my guidance to people like that is just go get a good set of riding lessons where you can just learn to be comfortable on a horse and ride competently. Then you can evolve to reiners, because reining is a difficult sport.
Yeah.
But the other thing I suggest to people to do is go to some events. Try to learn as much as you can. We have great placement on a product called HorseIQ.com. That's a product that was built at APHA when I was there, and it shows different disciplines and how to judge them. So my guidance to everyone is learn the rules, learn them really well.
Yeah.
You may decide, and I think you brought up something very important. You can participate in reining as a rider, you can participate as a breeder, you can participate as an owner, and you can participate as a fan. And we're doing some things to help with that. We did a little test run at the Derby this year, where people could mark their own cards. It's an electronic product where they could mark their own judge cards against, and then compete essentially against the professional judges. That's a good way to learn the rules. And we've taken the position we don't care what your interest is. We want to get you involved. So
Yeah.
you may be in a apartment in Manhattan, like horses, like reiners, and know you're never going to ever ride a reiner, but you're really interested in them.
Mm-hmm.
We want to give you an opportunity as well. I mean, think about it. How many fans of thoroughbred racing are actually going to ride a thoroughbred racehorse?
Right.
Pretty darn small, like almost zero. But there are different ways of getting engaged, and we want to do the same. We know that we have, for example, 300,000 plus social media contacts. Well, we have 15,000 members and 300,000 social media contacts. Well, that tells you something about how broad the interest level is in reining, and we want to give you an opportunity to participate regardless of what that is, whether you're whether you're a rider, whether you're a trainer, whether you're a owner, or you're just a fan, you just like the sport. We're working on ways of improving opportunities for everyone who enjoys the sport.
Yeah, you just brought up a really good point, because, the horse industry has not really been looked at in the same light as other sports that have fans. And that's really cool that you're trying to do that, and other places should consider this too, because the horse industry can be a little, I don't want to say closed off, but it can be very closed off to new people. And it's cool that you're building these things and having these things available for people, even like myself. Like, I will never ride a reiner. I will probably never buy one, but I like to watch it, and I like to be a part of it, and I think it's cool. And that's an entire market that our whole industry is missing out on, because we don't really operate like that. Like what you just said, basketball games. You have people that watch basketball games, don't ever play it in their life.
Yep.
So why can't the horse industry do the same thing?
Right. And we haven't thought, I think there's a couple of things that we probably need to do more of. One of the things we haven't done in the past is we don't think of ourselves as athletes.
Right.
And we are. And it's the rider is an athlete and the horse is an athlete. If you think about what's happened at PBR over the last couple of decades, that's one of the things they've been incredibly successful at. They don't even refer to them oftentimes as bulls. They refer to them as athletes. These are great athletes. And we could take a lesson from that as well, that these are great athletes, both the riders, and by the way, they're professional athletes. So the horses are professional. Many of the riders are professional. We need to think about ourselves that way. I think you hit the nail on the head. The word I like to use is insular. We often insulate ourselves from everyone else. The reality is there's a whole group of people who could find our sport incredibly important and valuable for them at some level. And it could just be as a fan. And I had this conversation with a trainer the other day who said, why do we care about fans? They don't buy horses. Well, the point is, the more fans we have, the more eyeballs we have, the easier it is, for example, for us to sell and to create relationships with sponsors, which has a direct impact on things like purse money and things like that. So we just need to think broadly about what the interest is in reining, and the interest in reining is multifaceted.
Yeah, and it's I think probably you just made me think about something too when you mentioned the PBR. They are, the whole phrase athletes kind of separates the sport from being something backyard, quote unquote, versus something that's going to be taken professional. And we do need to do more of that. But I do think that maybe, and I don't know if you can agree or not, there is always going to be a backlash with somebody and something when animals are involved. And PBR did get a push. They'll get a push every now and you'll see people will say, well, it's animal abuse, it's this and that's that. And, of course, we all know it's not. People that are been in the industry know this isn't the case. maybe more efforts that could go into educating the public on, that's something that needs to be taken into consideration when you do try to reach a fan base that knows nothing about the sport, is being able to have those educational references for people to go, okay, well, oh, it's not abuse. Oh, okay, that could be do you think that could be one of the obstacles that everybody kind of faces when we want to reach fans per se?
Well, one of the tenets in our strategic plan is about animal welfare, and part of that is about how we communicate animal welfare. And so sometimes when people see something that they don't understand, they knee-jerk to something nefarious. So
right.
Our job I think the important thing for us to do is become far, far more transparent and in describing what we do, what our training techniques are, how well these horses are taken care of. They're, the fascinating thing to me is I sometimes will bump into people who will say, they'll watch some show about horses in the wild, not realizing that the lifespan of a horse in the wild is way less than it is in the horse show community. It's 6, 7, 8 years. And some of our horses, they can live, some of these performance horses can, it's not that uncommon to see horses in their 20s still competing. And occasionally you'll see a few even older than that. But the point is they're generally very well taken care of. Yes, there are occasionally people who misbehave. We just saw one of those with the dressage rider in the UK. So what we have to be able to do is to tell people in clear, distinct terms how we take care of our animals. And when someone does misbehave, we have to be able to react appropriately to that and to help educate our trainers and others about proper techniques for handling and managing horses. But yet it's always going to be a challenge, but the way to address that is towards transparency, not towards, closing in our sport.
Yeah. Yeah. It is a very gray area because I was just talking to somebody about that exact dressage rider and how that situation versus other situations and how it's been handled. Where can we as a whole in the horse industry, not just reining or paints or whatever have you, but as a whole kind of determine where that standard's at and what the consequences are, agreeing with what you're saying. So people that aren't horse people, you hear that a lot from horse people, non-horse people, horse people. Well, I think you touched on something important when you said that, that guy said that person said they don't buy horses. Well, that's the exact reason why the industry will stay where it's at and it won't grow.
Well, I think one of the wider things to understand is that we're a relatively small community.
Yeah.
Against 300 million Americans.
Right.
And that's just Americans. That's not worldwide. And we have to be cognizant of the fact that, there's a lot more of them doing things like making laws, passing legislation, setting standards in their community for animal welfare, things like that. So our job cannot be to criticize that. Our job has to be, how do we influence that and give them information to help them understand how we do, what we do, and why we do. And it can be as simple as, what do we use spurs for, and how, and a lot of times some of the animal welfare issues has to do with how a particular tool that we have, how we use it, and a perception of how we use it. And I don't think the vast majority of horse professionals use a spur for anything other than cueing, as a cueing tool. But there's a perception occasionally where you'll see someone who, for example, with the lunge whip that she used, the vast majority of people who use lunge whips don't whip horses. They're cueing devices.
Right.
So we leave people with the impression because we don't communicate to them what we do, you know. And one of my objectives is somebody wants to come to one of our shows and go look at the stalls and look at the horses and look at how they're taken care of. They need to be able to go back there and take a really good look. And that's one of the things that PBR did years ago. If a journalist wants to go back there and look at the bulls, they are more than welcome to go back and see the bulls and see how they're taken care of. So that kind of transparency is very important, and we have to do more of it. And it can never stop, and it can never slow down.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I'm really glad that you brought that up, because, you know, it's like talking to people on, you know, just out and about. Okay, well, if you want the industry to grow, you're going to have to change the way that you react to people that are outside of the industry. You know, there's only so much growth. There's only so much things that you can do within an existing small community. And that's really cool that you brought that up. And you're right, we're not much different from PBR, except PBR does have a fan base. They have people that go that'll never ride a bull. So why not embrace that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you think you're going to develop PBR by trying to grow the number of people who ride bulls, I mean, that's not ever going to happen. So
right.
I think there's a greater likelihood that we can get people to ride horses, but the reality is the vast majority of people in America and probably worldwide are not ever going to ride a horse. But that doesn't mean they cannot be fans of what we do.
Yeah, and you also kind of mentioned how it's like a domino effect. You know, even me as myself, I can sit here and say, you know, I've sponsored events and put money into events and things of that nature. And when I do that, I do it for the advertising perspective. I want to get an ROI on it. I want to see how many people I'm going to reach, and as any place should. And it's really cool that you hit on how the ability for us to embrace a fan base and people that are outside of the horse industry, it helps everybody that's in the pot. It helps the sponsors, it helps the riders, it helps the show committee, it helps everybody when you can be able to do that versus closing it off. What do you think, or how do you think that kind of affects the way that you are able to get sponsors and get the backing and get the things that you need to put on the shows and to do the things that you have to do to keep the industry growing?
Well, we take the approach that we take with sponsors is we feel like we're marketing partners. So what I mean by that is we're very laser focused on, if you want to be a partner with NRHA, our end game is for you to make more money. That's the idea. So we're not just throwing your logo up on a wall. You know, that's an antiquated approach to sponsorship. Our objective is to create ways in which you can generate more customers, or at least generate more customer interest by way, and we try to measure that by way of driving eyeballs to your social media area or to your website or to specific areas on your where you can tell your story. Now, it's your job in the end to sell the customer, but one of the things we can absolutely do is get the customer in front of you, so you can tell your story. So that's not always been the case in sponsorships in the past. So we really work pretty hard on that at NRHA. I always ask, working with Christy Landwehr, who does an incredible job for us, how is this going to help that person make more money? And quite frankly, she's been the catalyst for that with our sponsorships. Is the objective is to get them in front of enough eyeballs where they have the best opportunity of selling their product or selling their service or whatever it is that we're sponsoring. So that's going to be critical too, is communicating. The interesting thing in the horse world is we have many, many millions of people who are engaged with horses, many, depending upon whose data you look at, but it's many millions.
Right.
But what's different about it, and by the way, I saw a statistic that showed there were more people who participate in horse-type activities. There are as many who compete in horse activities as golf. Well, what's the
Oh,
difference?
wow.
Well, the difference is the horse communities are very fragmented. There's small groups of people, whereas golf, tennis, other sports are very concentrated. So if you're playing golf up until very recently with Liv, but you were engaged with the PGA. That's the golf organizing group. The horse world's not that way. Horse community is not that way at all. We're a collection of hundreds of different organizations all around, spread all over the world.
Right.
So that makes it a little bit more difficult to attract sponsorships, as there's not that one governing body. And I don't know how you'd ever really do that, but it makes it better for the exhibitor because they can find a home that really fits their agendas. But on the other side, from a sponsorship standpoint, it makes it more complicated.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Chrissy has done a very well job. I mean, she put me in contact with you. She's kind of set the bar because, as me, a little old me, I look at the NRHA, I'm like, God, they're huge. She took the time to just personally call me a couple of times and talk to me about this and introduce herself and things of that nature. And so I think that was really cool of her. That really kind of stuck with me because you have other places out there that don't make it personal. You know what I mean?
Well,
they make it.
She's a superstar. There's no question about it. But
yeah,
we had an organization. I don't want to. We had an organization that had a particular product segment. They did a lot of things, but they had a particular product area that they were struggling to get it off the ground and didn't really know how to do it. And so, we sat around and came up with a way to position it through a QR code that would drive new customers to their website, where they'd have an opportunity to sort of introduce this new product and service. And that worked out really, really well. That's kind of a customized approach. And where we can, we're pretty excited about doing those kinds of things because we know they're measurable, and we know that sponsor is going to be able to see a firsthand impact. And I think that's a part of this business that gets lost, but it's important, and we spend a lot of time on it. We spend a lot of time thinking about how we can position sponsors more effectively.
Yeah, and it's hard because, it's not like horse people or marketing people, but then that kind of just goes back to what we said a little bit ago. You have to have people that aren't horse people that can do the business things that you need to run it, because at the end of the day, the clubs, the shows, the trainers, it's still a business. So you have to run it like one.
Yeah, certainly. And it's and some people get that and some don't. The way I look at it is if we do our job well, the member and our riders and our trainers, if we really do our job well, they won't really know how certain things happen. They just happen. Certain positive things. It just happens. And that's the way I look at it. And, I'm not interested in, I don't think it's very effective to be spend a lot of time trying to tell people just how good you are at what you do. You have to show them. They have to see it happen. They may not know how it happened, but when they get a big check or a big purse check, they may not know exactly how it happened, but it happened and they're happy about it. So that's an important feature of what we do. I think of it as magic. Our job is do the magic, and you don't need to worry about how it got done. It just got done.
Well, I like the way you think.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I wanted to ask you to kind of where do you foresee, or can you touch base on kind of where NRHA sees itself in the future, in the next 5 years, the next 10 years? Where do you guys want to go, and things that you are thinking about?
Well, we have a strategic plan that we've developed very thoughtfully, and we have some things that we want to be known for, and in some circles we already are. But we want to make sure that we are seen as the preeminent organization in terms of animal welfare, that we take care of our animals, because we think that's got, not only is it the right thing to do, but it also gives you greater opportunity with sponsorships and developing revenue. We want to spotlight and make sure people understand that our professionals are the best, most highly trained, most highly prized trainers in the equine community. So we're going to spend a lot of time trying to do those kinds of things, and we want to position ourselves as being a place where you can come and where we have great professionals, and where the judges, you can trust the judging, because ours is a subjectively judged sport. And so one of the keys to the future for us is we want to continually create an environment where people know and expect that when they go to a show, they'll be judged fairly and appropriately and according to the rules. Mm-hmm. And we're going to spend a lot of time and energy developing those things in the next few years. And we think indirectly that'll have an impact, a positive impact on our events and our purse money and breeding and everything else.
So I've asked someone who her husband's a trainer to explain to me the scoring process of reining. Because when I first looked at it, I was like, oh my God, there's no way I can understand this. And it's actually pretty self-explanatory, but she kind of explained it to me. The way you guys judge and score and do that kind of ordeal in the pen, there's not a lot of room for error or opinion, I guess, per se. Whereas, like if you're in a pleasure show, it can get down to basically an opinion. But with reining, it's very kind of clear cut. And that I don't think people realize how cool that is.
Well, one of the things that we started at APHA was the creation of this horse IQ product. And it was predicated on a simple idea, and the simple idea was we've really spent, in the horse community in general, we've spent a lot of money training judges, a lot of money. Every organization spent a lot of time and resources on training judges, and that's good. The only problem with that is we probably haven't done a great job of training participants. They've got to figure it out for themselves, and I don't think that's always been that good, and I think that's created challenges in our industry. So we headed down the road of saying, look, here's a place you can go, and by the way, it's a product that we use to train our judges. So why not create an environment where the judges and the participants, where they all go to the same location. They all get the same information. And so we're hoping to evolve that more significantly over time. But, the trick I believe in the horse industry, horse show world, is for the judges and the exhibitors to be as knowledgeable about the rules as they can be. And I think we probably haven't done as good a job at that as we could have, and we're going to work pretty hard and already are working hard to try to make that happen.
Yeah, I think that would definitely be helpful for any of the contestants to be able to see that perspective of it, because you can get kind of blinded, I guess, or closed off when it comes to what's expected of you and not expected of you, and to be able to be there right there with the same person that's judging you, that opens up a world of knowledge that can help you in the long run. So that's pretty cool. More places should do that.
Well, what we want to try to do is, you know how this works, is when people, maybe they don't perform as well as they thought they should.
Right.
Well, what happens? Well, what happens is if they don't know if they don't know how they scored, they start asking people, or why they placed where they did. And then they get a variety of stories. Some of them are accurate and some of them are not accurate. So they're kind of left wandering out there trying to figure out, how do I get better? How do I perform better? And some have, get good advice and some don't. We're trying to create an environment where everybody gets the same information and they're better educated in the pen.
Yeah, that is right. You just kind of touched on something, because I had a conversation with a judge who, not a Reining judge, well, she was a Reining judge, but not now, where, outside of NRHA, like other discipline, like the ranch world and things of that nature, you can't speak to the judge to kind of ask them, okay, well, what did I do wrong, or what did I see, or this and that, And I remember back in the day, you could do that. It was actually like kind of honorable that you did that, because you took the initiative to want to, obviously improve yourself and things of that nature. So do you think that ability or that concept that you guys are trying to reach with that is going to keep you separated from other places and attract more people that are able to kind of go?
Well, I think this, as I mentioned, Horse IQ. That's a product that shows a lot of different disciplines, but where you can actually go judge them and see how your placings fit. It shows you how they're judged. I think it's critically important that people have a place, whatever it is, but they have a way to learn how they can do better. And their first step in that, I mean, if you think about it, if you're a professional baseball player and you don't know the rules, you're probably not a professional baseball player. You're not ever going to get there.
Right.
And I've seen too many people in the horse community who they relied on someone else to help them understand the rules. They personally didn't know the rules. And so that's an important thing. Well, it's an important thing for them to know. You need to know the rules, and most of us have handbooks or rule books, and the rule books they're one-dimensional renderings of the rules. You still have to imagine what the different maneuvers look like. So this is a way of sort of creating three-dimensional rule books, so people understand what is a +1, what is a -1, what's +1.5, what do I have to do to get a +1.5. Those are critical things that we have to try to develop and promote to our members in a strategic way, so that they're on the same page as judges, and it'll create a lot more harmony between judges and those who are showing, the riders and the owners. The more knowledgeable they are, the better. And Horse IQ is one of those things. I mean, we have a great announcer. He does a great, Steve Ross, he does an incredible job of educating people when he's announcing events, and he's doing our live streaming. He does a great job of helping them understand the rules, but it's multifaceted. But those are a couple of examples of where we have to get better at doing those kinds of things, and we'll continue to strive to do more in those areas.
Well, I'm on the website now. I'm looking at the website right now, and this is real. I wish something like this was available when I was showing. I mean, like you can literally submit a video and have somebody tell you what you're doing. And you're right. This helps eliminate not only misinformation, because nobody needs that, but false information or something that could lead you down the road that you don't want to go. This is really cool. I had no idea that this was even available.
Yeah, it's it's something that got developed at APHA, but it's a partnership now that includes some other organizations too.
Yeah.
But it's a really good tool, and it makes the and there, by the way, at least when I left APHA, there were quite a few 4-H groups and universities that were tied into that, and so it's a great tool for even like a small 4-H group that really doesn't have anyone they can turn to for rules and for judging. That's a simple way, inexpensive way for them to do that kind of thing. But those are the kinds of things that we can do today because of technology that we need to do more of.
Yeah, this is really nice. I mean, you would be ignorant to not at least look into this and see what it could do to help you in any facet of the horse industry.
I don't know how many events, classes are there, but it's quite a few. And, you're having more knowledge is never going to be a handicap for a rider. The more they know, the better their opportunities.
Well, this is very cool. Wow. Like I didn't even know this existed. That's really cool. This would have been helpful back in the day because I was talking to somebody about how I don't think not only the general public but even people that maybe have been in the industry for a couple of years realize how amazing the information is available, like at your fingertips now versus, before you didn't even have clinics. You didn't even have, people weren't on social media that much. It was hard to even find somebody to help you get into horses, much less learn how to ride or where to buy them. It was very hard to get anywhere in the horse industry versus now you can literally just hop online and buy a horse.
You can learn a lot.
Yeah.
Yep. And do a lot. Yep.
Well, I think that's all of the questions that I have that I was going to ask you about. If you have anything else you wanted to discuss, this has been very informative.